Ready to call to order the agenda for the Board of Adjustments regular session, City of Mount Pleasant, February the 9th, 2021.
Okay. Okay. I'm John Ankrum. I'm the building official here for the City of Mount Pleasant. I know James. I'm not too familiar with the rest of you guys. I'm sure we'll get to know each other. But essentially, the Board of Adjustments is a quasi-judicial board. So essentially what that means is that the decisions you guys make for the Board of Adjustment cases are legally binding. The only way to overturn your case would be to file a case in district court and proceed that way. So any decision you make in regards to any case that's brought before you is a legally binding case. Even the city can't overturn it. It has to go to district court. There has been cases where cities have actually sued their Board of Adjustments to get cases overturned. So it's a pretty powerful board, I guess, in that sense. I'll just go over some of the processes. I gave you guys kind of a little handout here of the procedure for the Board of Adjustments. I'm not sure if you got a copy of that. But basically the way, got a copy of it? No? Did they not get copies of it? It didn't get sent out? Okay. I'll make sure you guys all get copies of this Board of Adjustment. But essentially what it does is it lays out the, actually, can you make copies of all these, Regina? Not that. The procedures lays out when we have a case. It'll kind of be it'll be an agenda, just like you guys are used to seeing. After the call to order, it'll basically be housekeeping, go over the minutes if there's any board members that need appointees, that kind of thing. And then the chairman will read out the case. And then when you're done reading out the case, you'll typically ask for the city's response to it. I'll come up and I'll give my point of view. I'll either give a recommendation, I'll give a denial, or I might say that it's purely a board decision at that point. And then you'll open the meeting up for public hearing. Then anybody here who's in favor, typically, you can ask to come up and speak. And then once they're done, then you'll typically ask those who are opposed to come up and speak. At that point, you typically close the open session, and then you guys have a discussion amongst yourself. If you have any questions or anything at that point, you can recall anybody back up to the mic that needs to be, and then you guys will vote on the decision. And then once you vote on the decision, that's the final decision. Any questions in regards to that? Exactly. And I'll have a memo in with each case. You'll get it. It's kind of the same process as the P&Z. When we send it out, notifications will go out to all property owners within 200 feet. They can weigh in on it. Those will be attached with your case memos that you guys will get as well. And then I'll also have a memo in there, and it'll kind of lay out the case, and then it'll lay out the city's position. And it'll either be recommend denial or we have no objection to the case.
So who comes before the Board of Adjustments?
That's the next step. So basically the Board of Adjustments is a hardship board. So that means that there has to be something uniquely different to this specific property that will not allow somebody to build or develop on this property that falls within our ordinances and our guidelines. So for example, James actually has kind of an issue on one of his lots. I'll kind of use your lot. He has power lines that are running through the back of his lot. Because of the power lines there, he may come to the Board of Adjustments and say, hey, I can't meet the 25-foot front yard setback. I can only do 20 foot. So he'd come before the board and he would make that plea to you guys, and then you guys would decide whether or not it fits the neighborhood, it's within the characteristics of the street, it's not going to cause any undue burden to any additional property owners, loss of value, etc., and then make a decision based on that information. It is a hardship board, and when she comes back with the other information, I'll kind of go over the guidelines, but basically the hardships cannot be financial, they cannot be self-imposed, they got to be something that's uniquely different to this particular property. An odd-shaped lot, maybe a lot has a really steep hill in the back of it that they can't fill in, just something that's extremely unique to this particular parcel of land that someone's looking to develop. If you kind of look at the last page there, it says hardship right at the top. That kind of sets, basically, down below it says the following guidelines are based on the decision of the Texas courts and boards of experience over the years. In general, these are the factors that the board considers in determining whether there's a hardship exists. Now, obviously, there is no universal definition of what would constitute a hardship. It'll be based on each individual particular parcel. But one of the items on number 1 is hardship cannot be personal. So basically, it can't be self-imposed. It can't be solely for financial reasons. Conditions must be unique, oppressive, and not common to other properties that are in that area. And that's where it goes into hardships. Might include steep slopes, small lots, irregular shaped lots, etc. A hardship cannot be self-created. An applicant for a site plan cannot claim a hardship on a condition that he or she is responsible for creating. So if they draw up a site plan and bring it before Robert and they say, hey, I can't meet your guys's because of this or that, well, it's just because they drew it up that way doesn't mean that we have to approve it that way. And nor does it mean that the board has to grant them any variances to that particular issue. A variance may not result in granting special advantages to the property that are not available to other similar properties, and the variance must not result in allowing a change of use to the property not permitted with the zoning clarification of the property. So if somebody's trying to come in to you to get a zoning variance, that's the Board of Adjustment. Even though you are the Planning and Zoning Board, they don't go through the Board of Adjustments. They go through the Planning and Zoning Board to make that happen. Just over the years, honestly, 50% of the ones I deal with are typically side setbacks, rear setbacks, and front setbacks. Those are the typical ones. We might get into some issues where the house, they can't meet the minimum size requirements for some reason. The other 50% that I've dealt with over my career is typically title companies and banks. When they go to sell a property, if they get a survey of a property and it doesn't meet the city's standard for setbacks, they say they will not sell the property or clear the title until they get a variance from the city. And so we get a lot of those cases coming through. You might have a little piece of a corner of the house hanging past the front build line, and they just won't sign off on it until they get a variance from the city. So it's typically things like that. One of the weird ones I had was there was a 100-year-old tree someone didn't want to cut down, and so they wanted a setback to save a tree, and that's one of those where I'll say it's a board decision. You know, the city's probably not going to really have too much concern one way or the other on a situation like that. Other than that, some of the guidelines I highlighted on these other 2 papers here. On the second page, it kind of goes over some of the issues that we'll be hearing. These ones aren't too common. Number 1, it's basically expanding a non-conforming use. So if we have a commercial building or a residential building that currently doesn't meet our zoning setbacks and standards, they might come for a variance to add on to it, to expand it, to enlarge it, something to that extent. That one happens once in a while. It's not too common. Number 2, it says modifications to height, yard area, coverage, parking regulations, those type of issues. Those will come up from time to time. Let's see. And other than that, it'll typically just be side setbacks, front setbacks, rear setbacks, variances. And then it kind of just goes into the powers of the board, that you guys are a legally binding board, and to reverse your decision, they have to go to district court, essentially. Are there any questions?
There's one other area. This is Robert LaCroix speaking. There's one other area that the board does look at occasionally, and it's very, very seldom. But sometimes in the ordinance and the zoning code, the administrator, which would say be me, interprets the code a certain way. You know, it's not black and white necessarily, but there's an interpretation of something in the zoning code. A person can't challenge that, and the challenges usually comes to the Board of Adjustment. If there's a challenge to some interpretation of some portion of the code, I can't really give you a great example. Sometimes maybe it's the measurement of the height of a building, for instance. If we say it's the maximum of 35 feet and we have a particular system to measure it, and somebody would want to challenge it as to how we measured it, it's one of those things where the either maybe the building folks or myself are making a call on a zoning requirement, and it's just somebody might want to challenge that. It's usually occasionally. Does it come to you very often? No. In my experience, I almost never had somebody challenge an interpretation of the code very often. So, but that is another part of the CBA about the adjustment part. Just to let you know that.
And just for a little clarification on that, on the interpretation issues, those will be issues out of the ordinances and the zoning requirements, not building code interpretations. That's a completely different board. So if they came to you and they wanted to say that my interpretation of what a firewall is, for example, they would have to go to a different board and not this board. It would just be issues that are in the zoning code. That's the board of I'd have to look at it. I think it's the Board of Appeals. The Building Code Board of Appeals, I believe it is. And I don't even think we have a board.
I don't think that board is established in this community right now, but that would be what it is. Anything on the building side is a completely different thing. But the zoning interpretation would come into.
Are there any questions, concerns?
But since you're acting as the Planning Zoning Commission in your roles as chairman and vice chairman, if you'd rather change that, I was just thinking for consistency, it might be okay to leave it the way it is, you know, if you guys are okay with that. I mean, it's totally up to you if you want to change who that is, but it makes it easier, I think, on you all just to kind of keep them both the same, if that's okay.
Like I said, for the chair, I did put the procedures in there as well. You should have a copy of that. It's the Board of Adjustment procedure.
I mean, as far as the Board of Adjustments, I mean, they'll meet along with the P and Z. I mean, not the same meeting, but the same night. Is that what we're trying to do?
Yeah, the Board of Adjustments is as on an as needs basis. So typically 3 to 4 cases a year pop up, and they're only once a month. So it would probably fall on the first P&Z meeting of the month, every month, and it would be from 5:36. Honestly, in my experience, with the exception of a few, most cases take less than 30 minutes to get through.
Okay.
Before you do this, the last thing that some city councils do, they have the ability to give you other tasks, to look at other things as far as variances and whatnot concerned. And in the future, they may. I know some of the cities that I've worked with have tasked the Board of Adjustment with fence variances, things that sign variances. Yeah. Fences are a big deal. You may get, like John said, if you may become the sign variance group. If the city council doesn't want to do it, they've got the ability to give you those tasks, and sometimes they do that. And I've seen it in other cities where they just multitask you. You know, you're already multitasking right now because you're both the P&Z and the ZBA. So, but they can assign those other things individually to you if they want to. It has to be done by ordinance, but they can. I think they'll have some cookies or something here for you.
Oh, adjourn the meeting of the Board of Adjustment?
I second.
All pass? Any objection? All right, ready to go on to the next roll. Okay, we're gonna call this meeting to order. We're gonna consider the approval of the minutes for the August 11th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and take any action necessary. And consider the approval of the minutes for October the 13th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and take any action necessary. And consider the approval of the minutes for the January the 12th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting and take any action necessary. So do I hear a approval of the meetings?
I approve.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye. All against? Nobody against, so all the approval of the minutes of the meetings are approved. All right, we're gonna move on. Okay, Nikki, are you gonna recuse yourself from this item number 5? Okay, Nikki Hines gonna recuse herself. All right, we're going to hold a public hearing to consider the request of Robert Monroy, applicant to rezone lots 1 and 2, Senior Community Edition, Phase 1, in addition to the Titus County, Texas, as recorded in the plat cabinet slide number 561, plat records in Titus County, Texas, and a 9.65 acre tract of land situated in the prior Heron Survey, abstract number 265, Titus County, Texas, and being all of the remainder of the tract, 20.594 acre tract called Exhibit A, conveyed from Mount Pleasant operators to Frito Enterprises 1 LLC by general warranty deed as recorded in file number 20150256, Public Records, Titus County, from the Planned Development District to Multifamily District located at the intersection of Green Hill Road, 2152, and Senior Community Drive, Mount Pleasant, Texas. Take any action as necessary.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is an application for a rezoning request. It is from Mr. Monroe. He owns the property as described as lots 1 and 2 of Senior Community Center and that 9.65 acre tract that's located in the same area. The property right now is currently, it's located up on Green Hills Road at FM 2152, and it's at the intersection of Senior Community Drive. You know, there's a nursing facility there on that street, and primarily that's what that development was. I think we've got a locational map, the next map, to kind of give you an idea of the location. And like I had said, the property is currently zoned Planned Development District, and it was intended as that after reading the case, when going back and reading it, that the Planned Development District was pretty much intended for that nursing home to be built there. But what they were, I think, intending to do was maybe expand on that operation. So they limited the uses to the nursing home and then maybe possibly, I would say, assisted living cottages that were going to maybe be put on the back part of it. But at the time they zoned all the property because it was all under that one ownership. They zoned it all of that Planned Development District. This district. The thing that's a little bit difficult with the district is that they didn't really, they just called it a Planned Development District and just named it in the minutes to those particular uses, but there were no other conditions or no other things in there or no other reference to any other zoning district at the time that it was done a few years ago. So it's made it a little difficult to go back and rezone this and try to amend that Planned Development District, which that's what you would do most of the time. But in this case, it's kind of completely different, and it didn't really make a lot of sense the way it was zoned without having a set of conditions that were put into an ordinance. So those weren't existing. So what Mr. Monroe wants to do is actually on the properties that face out to Green Hill, The larger lot there, he would like to build 2 single-family homes on lots that'll equate to about 10,000 square feet. And then the lot to the north of the street there on the Senior Community Drive, he'd like to build what would be sort of a quadplex, or kind of a fourplex, what I call it. There is one directly north of him, so it's not an incompatible thing to do there because he has the same basic development pattern there. And with that, those two would be developed that way. The multifamily zoning that he's asked for will accommodate both of those uses. You can build single family in the multifamily also. And then on the back side of the property, the 9.65 acres, the intent was to build an apartment complex back there. There are some governing factors back there. There's some drainage issues. There's a detention area back there now that's going to have to be addressed. So that's going to limit the scope of what you can build back there. And there's also, we have the extension of fire lanes and things back there. We don't have a plan yet because he's just fundamentally trying to get the zone to where he can be able to do it. You will see a site plan and preliminary plat. That piece of the property is not currently platted, and it will have to be platted. Those front pieces are, they're on the Green Hills. They're already in that initial original plat. But the back part will come back to you at some point. You'll see a concept, you'll see a site plan, and we'll do a preliminary plat. So you'll be able to review that complex should it come forward to you at a later time. So what we were conversing with Tim on the complex is that that this zoning request, this multifamily zoning request, would essentially encompass all these pieces, and they could actually build what they needed to do on that. And I think the city's pretty comfortable with that part of it. We sent out notices within that 200-foot area as required. We did receive one notice, or two notices that were against the proposal, and then we received one notice was in favor. I did receive a phone call. I don't know if that was the notice we got in favor, but they were in favor of it also. So we had a pretty even mix of favorable. And we did send it across the street, so we didn't get that many notices back that were against the proposition. So at this time, Mr. Monroe is here. It is a public hearing, and I'm glad to answer any questions of staff.
Mr. Sherbert, Marshall Sherbert, had voted against it, and he mentioned that about his taxes being higher, but this zoning is not going to affect his property, correct?
No, I don't think so. I think the concern is that an overall concern if you get commercial property near you, that that will have some snowball effect, of increasing property values. Not necessarily true. It's about use. If your property is residential, and this is not essentially commercial zoning, multifamily is not really considered a commercial zone, so it doesn't really have that effect. There is a cumulative zoning in Mount Pleasant, but it's also based on use. As long as that property stays there, there may be some increase in value to the multifamily property and those properties that are internal to that, where the nursing home is whatnot, but it won't necessarily affect properties that are zoned residential around it whatsoever. And at some later date, if more commercial or more property of that nature should be zoned that way up there, then property values will increase, but not if he's living there normally. Not now. It should not be on that. And if also, obviously, if it's a homesteaded property and you're at a certain age, your taxes freeze anyway. So it would only happen if that property owner were to sell his property and then some other development come in. But affecting him, no, it won't affect him.
Right. So this shouldn't affect him. On the other one that was against, which was Mr. Logan, I mean, he filled out no explanation of comments of,
Now,
and I don't know, where is his property?
I didn't get a chance to locate that on the map. We got it today, so I'll have to locate that in there.
His is gonna be 16085 across the street. Across the street, 16085.
One of the residential lots across the street, it looks like then. It's, at 200 feet, it's not picking up a lot of it because the street right of ways probably more than 100 feet, and so it's just grabbing his on the edges there. So the percentage, what the law says, or the state law says, it has to be 20% of the protest area. That's not even going to be 1% probably, or less, 2% maybe.
Which way are these houses gonna face? Are they gonna face this senior community?
Face out to Green Hills. They'll front out to Green Hill. And Mr. Monroe's here to address that. There's a concept plan in there. Well, but it doesn't. I don't think it splits a lot though. They're okay on the setbacks. They're okay on the lot size. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So on the residential, he's gonna sell them, or is he gonna use them as rental property, or?
I think he can address that. I think he's just going to build homes to sell. That's the intent. The ones, the quadplex may be rental property for him.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Monroe?
Mr. Chairman, can you open the public hearing then?
Okay, well, we need to open the public hearing. Mr. Monroe?
Well, this is my first time I'm here, so I'm doing this for my very first time, but maybe trying to answer the question about the location of the houses. It's gonna be facing the Green Hill Road as the state houses. I own the property just right in front. It's a 2525 Green Hill Road. It's just very small house. It just on the across the road, and on the north side of the road, not on the Green Hill Road, but the one, I don't know what's the name on it. The duplex is gonna be just similar for whatever it is, just on the back. So I'm just kind of mirror for what it is. It's gonna be my plan, but the two houses gonna be state houses, for around 16 to 1800 square feet for single family. Trying to match the neighborhood and trying to make it nice for the neighbors, on the country club side. I mean,
So there'll be brick homes, brick or stone, or something of that nature?
Anybody got any questions for Mr. Monroe? Okay. So do I hear, anybody else would like to speak before I close out this public? Okay, on this here, we'll close out the public remarks or public hearing.
So at this time, I'll make a motion to change the zoning to the multifamily zoning as requested.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's passed. All right, thank you, Mr. Monroy. Okay, we're gonna move on to item number 6. Consider the approval of a preliminary plat of RB Capital I-30 addition, being a 2.35 acre tract of land situated in Resin B. Linksome Survey, abstract number 348, Titus County, Texas, and being all the remainder of the 30 acre tract of land called 14th tract, conveyed from Edith Langston, independent executive, to Jack Langston Company by executor deed as recorded in volume 712, page 301, real property records, Titus County, Texas, located on the north side of I-30 and adjacent to the south right-of-way line of County Road 3210. Being the address of 1542 County Road 3210.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, again, this is an application for preliminary plat of this 2.35 acre tract. As you stated, it's located basically near the frontage road, I-30, on the south right-of-way line of County Road 3210. The property is currently zoned commercial. That request came to you about a month or so ago. Mr. Garrett brought it forward, and we rezoned the property. The staff's been reviewing the preliminary plat documents. We've gotten engineering plans, and we're at the moment of finalizing engineering. That the final engineering will be a requirement as they move forward to construct as a condition of approval for this preliminary plat. The city sewer is located on the east side of the property, and the owner is going to have to extend the line to tie into that sewer. And this, I had incorrectly got this memo out to you, but after I had written it, I was under understanding that Tri-Water was that, but actually the city, according to our utilities manager, we actually are able to serve this particular lot with water. So scratch that thought in there. They can get water from the city. A little confusion on my part as to where Tri-Water was the server or not, but apparently we have a meter down there, or we can meter it from a location there. We can get a line in there. So the city's able to serve them with water. And again, we've approved we've been reviewing their site plan that they turned in for the construction, and we basically have administratively approved that. But again, the only really thing is that they will have to final engineering, and I think the only outstanding thing is that we're just trying to finish up some of the grading plan out there for the site. The last thing is that before we are able to CO the building, they'll bring a final plat back. This is just preliminary. They're going to go ahead and build a site off of the preliminary plat. They'll bring back, once it's completed and we finalize all the construction and the utility construction and everything out there, then they'll submit a final plat, which will bring it back to you for approval at that point. And that's really all we've got. And we just would recommend to you that you approve the preliminary plat as submitted with the conditions that we've stated in the memo. I'd be glad to answer any questions. Mr. Garrett is here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, the board has no questions. We can open this up to the public. We really have no questions for Mr. Garrett. Anybody got any questions? Okay. All right. Well,
I'll make a motion to approve.
And I will second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, passed, so we're done. All right, you can make the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Everybody say aye.
Aye.
All passed. We're adjourned.